we live this time?
I don't know.
I'm checking.
What the hell is going on? We still
I
have
found a
access
new
to
live
StreamYard.
stream link, but I don't see.
We still
It's
have
live.
access to the StreamYard. We could
Oh,
always
we are live. We're live
We
now.
are? We're live?
Yeah. Yes,
we
we're
live?
live. We're live in a different stream
Holy
though, so
mother
everybody
of
from the other
God.
stream might have to jump in here. But hey, we're finally live. So
All right. We're back.
should
Okay,
I hit it?
guys.
Ready?
Yes, now Anthony can do our intro. God, that was horrible.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And this is our fifth try at this, but we are finally live here on the Fireside Giants channel. Excited to talk some Giants football with you all. And we're going to be focusing on Shedeur Sanders today because if you haven't seen it, the reports are that his draft stock is sliding a little bit. So we want to talk about, should the Giants take him at number 3 or should they pass on him like many of the reports are indicating that they will? We've got all the big insiders. Adam Schefter, you've got Ian Rappaport, Jordan Schultz, all of them saying the Giants are leaning towards passing on Sanders with the number 3 overall pick. So we're going to talk about should they not, the pros and the cons, and look at some mock drafts as well later on in this live stream and talk about different scenarios that could unfold for the New York Giants, while also, of course, interacting with all of you in the live chat. Super excited to be back live streaming once again. I think this is the 4th day in a row here on Fireside Giants. Very exciting. So, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And how are you feeling about Shedeur Sanders and his potential draft stock slide?
I'm feeling like Samwise Gamgee after Frodo took him back. This is a great day. Obviously, like you said, 4th time streaming. This is also our 4th stream we've been trying as we were trying to get this thing set up for some reason. It just wasn't connecting. But in the chat so far, Steven, Adrian, Dr. Jack, Lewis, Thomas, Colton, Bonnie, Mosh, Jason, Adrian again, and Desmond. What is good? What is up in the chat? Obviously, going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders, as Anthony mentioned, and answering your guys' questions in the chat as well, and just kind of having good conversation as we have been, as we kind of progress towards the draft in a couple of weeks. I'm pretty excited, and there's a lot of different narratives and elements to this conversation that has been coming out. You mentioned all the big draft analysts talking about Shedeur Sanders and his stock that's been very, very quiet. Like last year, we heard a lot of stocks rising as we approached the draft. Specifically, J.J. McCarthy went from a 2nd-round pick to a top 15 pick in the course of a couple of weeks. Some people thought he was going to go 6 to the Giants. So, now we're sitting here wondering, where does Sanders go? What is his situation? I want to bring up a point that I tweeted today and get your guys' take on it. I think it's kind of interesting. But Adam Schefter said today, there's not a lot of noise regarding Sanders at the number 2 and the number 3 picks. Now, that would be the Browns and it would be the Giants. Obviously, the Giants need a quarterback. However, Sanders is the only one that's really you could justify taking at 3rd overall. But because he's the only option, you don't want to find yourself forcing it because there's no other choice. So the alternative is you go BPA, whether that be Abdul Carter, whether that be Travis Hunter. Anthony, I know that you believe that Sanders is worthwhile taking at 3. We're going to talk about that, get your perspective on it, why you feel that way, but also why you think his stock might be slipping. I personally feel a lot of his media attention was manufactured earlier this offseason by his own team. The, throwing the football in New York City with neighbors and hanging out with Isaiah Simmons and doing this and doing that. The dap-ups, it was all Colorado media propping him up on a national scale. And like you said, Anthony, you said it before, the algorithms feed us our specific team kind of perspective, whether it be the Giants cleats or whether or not Sanders has picked the Browns to play in Madden. If you're a Browns fan, and from that perspective, there's been a lot of media attention, crazy stuff going on. Nothing to do with him as a player, just really the narrative with him in the media and how he's been propped up. He is a good player. I'm not gonna sit here and act like he isn't. He's got some really good traits. You guys know I don't really feel he's worth the 3rd overall pick, but that doesn't mean he's a bad football player and he's gonna be bad in the NFL. It's just there's certain things that I have concerns with regarding his style of play. But Anthony, I want to give you a second here to kind of talk about why you think his stock is dropping right now. Why analysts are coming out and suggesting that. Do you think it's real or do you think it's just smoke and noise?
No, I think there's some truth to it, and I think it's about his evaluation. Now, You threw some words into my mouth there, Alex, and I got to tell you, caution, all right? Because you said that I think he's worthwhile taking at number 3, and that's not necessarily what I've said. I said I would take him at number 3 because I think the only position that you reach on is quarterback. That's not saying that he's worth the number 3 overall pick. That's saying that a quarterback that you have a somewhat conviction in is worth the number 3 overall pick. And I think that's pretty clear to differentiate between those two things because it's actually very rare that you have a quarterback prospect who is like the highest graded player in the draft class. You're always going to have quarterbacks go off the top of the board because of the importance of the position, but most of the time these quarterbacks are ranked 10th to 15th in the draft class going in the top 3 to 5 picks. It's just the weird case with Sanders is if he's a top 3 pick, that's not a player who's 10 to 15 on the rankings. This is a player who's between 20 and 40 on the rankings. That's a big difference, and that's why I think teams are starting to sour on the idea of taking him at number 3 overall. I don't think that it's for any non-football reasons. I know that's something that a lot of fans speculate. They think, oh, he's a media distraction. Or, oh, Deion Sanders, the teams don't want to deal with him. I don't think it's any of that, Alex. I think it's strictly football. I think if you look at him from a football perspective, you've said this before, he doesn't necessarily have elite physical traits. He's short for the position technically. He's 6'1", I think, and ideal quarterbacks are like 6'4". He's got a mediocre to slightly above arm, depending on how you look at it, maybe slightly below average. He doesn't have an elite arm, and he doesn't have elite physical strength or athleticism and speed either. So, from a physical standpoint, he's not what NFL teams typically look for at the quarterback position. And while he has some great film and he does some great things on his film, those drawbacks are ranking him closer to the 30s than they are to the number 1 overall pick. And that's why I think teams might sour on him and why he might not go in the top 3 selections. So to clarify, I would take him at number 3 overall if we really needed a quarterback, but the New York Giants technically don't need a quarterback now. Not necessarily need a franchise quarterback. They do have a pair of starting veteran guys who can play out this season for them. And while that doesn't mean that they have a long-term solution, they don't necessarily have to find that long-term solution right now with the number 3 overall pick. If they take Shedeur Sanders, Alex, I will be happy about it because I think he's an ultra-accurate quarterback. He's a very efficient quarterback, and I do see potential for him to develop into a franchise quarterback. But if they don't take Shedeur Sanders, it's not the end of the world to me because we do have a viable starting option at the position, and there is always more time to extend to find that quarterback if you want. I do hate kicking the can down the road. I wish the Giants drafted a quarterback last year, but unfortunately they didn't, and I'm very happy to have Malik Neighbors, but it's just a process finding that QB. But yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy that argued for trading up a couple spots to draft J.J. McCarthy. So yeah, obviously I would be comfortable taking Sanders number 3 overall. But there's also a big difference there. Last year, the Giants quarterback going into that draft was Daniel Jones. This year it's Russell Wilson. So now I don't feel like we as urgently need to land a quarterback in the first round of this year's draft. But I do think that there is a slippage to his draft stock, Alex. I mean, we've talked about it. PFF has him ranked in the 40s. Dane Brugler has him at 30-something. I think that the highest I've seen him on any draft ranking from any of these analysts and insiders is somewhere around 20. So that ultimately is why I think that he is falling in draft stock. It's not because of non-football reasons. I think it's because of his body of work as a football prospect.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And listen, this guy is deadly accurate. Obviously, has some great fundamentals in footwork. He's worked with Tom Brady's coach. And, I think that this is somebody that when you look at him as a pure kind of pocket passer, there's a lot of potential. I don't love him as a runner, obviously. I think he's limited in that regard, and I think to have our differences in that perspective in terms of his athleticism. His arm strength is nothing to be totally excited about. It is not much velocity. You watch Cam Ward, there's zip. Like, he can put, like, frozen ropes on the field off balance. Sanders doesn't have that type of power behind his arm. He's not going to get it there in a hurry. But what I will say is that the accuracy, if you're running an offense that has an identity, has a system, has discipline, he's going to be able to do some good stuff for you in that regard. The problem is we don't really have an offense like that because I think the offense that we want to run is downfield centric. It's more explosive, and I don't know if that's his style. He had 21% of his throws last year were screens, and Travis Hunter was a menace in that regard. But I'll ask you this, Anthony, and this is my take right now, and I think it's a good take, and I want to get your take on it. Lots of takes. Here's what I think. Do you believe, and I'm going to ask you a question to preface this question for you. Do you believe that J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix were better prospects than Shedeur Sanders?
No, I think J.J. McCarthy was. I think Bo Nix and Shedeur Sanders are about even, and I think that I probably would have had Michael Penix beneath. Well, I don't know. Penix, I actually think I have to think back. I think I had Penix in front of Bo Nix. So the only one of those that I can definitively say I think was a better prospect was J.J. McCarthy, but I was much higher on him than the consensus. But out of those other three, Shedeur Sanders, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix, I think they're just about even. And then that's where, when prospects are just about even, it boils down to scheme fit for me. And as I've said many times, I think Shedeur Sanders is a perfect scheme fit for Brian Dable's offense. So I would probably give him the edge.
Okay, so I'll ask you this in terms of okay, let's say you have JJ McCarthy as slightly. Wait, are you saying that JJ McCarthy is behind Shedeur Sanders or
No.
about
I
even?
have J.J. McCarthy in front of Shedeur Sanders.
Okay, so my question is this, or really my logic is this: JJ McCarthy, if they passed on him last year at 6, how can we justify taking Shedeur Sanders at 3 this year if the consensus is that we thought JJ McCarthy was a better prospect than Sanders?
Well, the
Back
reason,
then.
yeah, I understand this logic, and it gets brought up a lot, but the reason that the Giants did that is because they just handed $160 million to Daniel Jones. That's why they passed on a quarterback. That was an egregious error. You and I knew that when the signing was made. At least I was very vocally against signing him to that contract, and once they signed him to that contract, they felt like they had to commit to it. And that's why they went ahead with the playmaker. Because look at it from this perspective, Alex. In 2022, when Brian Dable took over as the head coach, I think he thought, yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to get a ton out of Daniel Jones. We probably won't make the playoffs this year. But then you know what? He made it work. So I think going into 2024, he was like, well, maybe I can do that again. I can make it work with Daniel Jones for a year. Let's just get another playmaker in here. And I think that's what it came down to. But I do understand your logic. But for me personally, since I wouldn't have passed on J.J. McCarthy, in this situation, it's hard for me to justify passing on the quarterback, except we have a quarterback on the roster that I actually do believe in now. And that's all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that if you have, a quarterback and Russell Wilson, and the context is different, obviously. Last year we had Daniel Jones. This year we have Russell Wilson. But let's talk about, I think someone asked this before, and I think it's a pretty good point to bring up. And we've had this discussion, and guys in the chat, I want to hear your perspective on this too. Do you think that having a quarterback on the roster in 2025 is better for Joe Shane and Brian Dable, even if they don't play? Let's say they draft Sanders, he doesn't play a snap in 2025. Do you think that's better for them and their longevity in terms of keeping their jobs, or do you think it's more important to have a playmaker that's going to make an impact in 2025 and help you win football games, or at least from a business perspective, create an identity in the trenches, bring people to the stadium to watch Travis Hunter be a two-way freak, watch Abdul Carter be a freak in nature in the defensive front? Do you think that it's more important for them to win now or have a quarterback on the roster that doesn't play at all in 2025? Anthony, we've had this discussion. Just give me your take once more on what you think is more important, just so the fans, the people in the chat can get your perspective. But I want you guys to give me your answer too.
All right, more important from my perspective or from Joe Shane's perspective?
From Joe Shane's perspective.
I think for Joe Shane, it's more important to win games this year, and I think that gets done by having a superstar playmaker like an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter. So, yeah, I think that would be them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that too. I think it's more important to win football games in 2025. And look, Brian Dable, we know that he's a good offensive coach. And Michael, by the way, who said Fireside Giants is the shiz. Thank you, good sir. Really appreciate that. I do believe that winning is in the best interest of the team. All John Mara wants is not to be an embarrassment. You know what I mean? He wants to go to Arlington, and he wants to not get blown out by the Cowboys. He wants to go to Philadelphia and not watch Saquon Barkley absolutely murder us. Go.
Let me just jump right in right there. You're exactly right. John Mara doesn't want to be an embarrassment, and I'm going to tie that into the super chat. That's why I was so urgently trying to bump in here.
Hit it.
Anthony left us a super chat. Thank you so much, Anthony. It's like I'm talking to myself here, but Anthony left a super chat saying, if we pass on Sanders, watch him become a superstar. And that's why I was going to just jump right in there and tie that into what you were saying. John Mara doesn't want to be an embarrassment. The Giants are tired of being an embarrassment. They're tired of passing on players who go on to be superstars elsewhere. They're tired of letting their players leave who go on to be superstars elsewhere. it absolutely does tie in. Do you not think that that fear might live in the back of the minds of Joe Shane? Exactly what you're talking about right here. He's tired of being blown out by these other teams. But maybe if they end up passing on Shedeur and he becomes a franchise quarterback elsewhere, is that not going to be a level of embarrassment that maybe Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and everybody else can't survive?
It's a valid point, right? But what if you pass on Travis Hunter and he becomes one of the most exciting, dynamic playmakers the league has ever seen because of his two-way potential, and you now lost a guy that's going to draw fans to the stadium? You know, like the probability, and I think this is my take right now, and just from a pure perspective, aside from positions, Travis Hunter has a higher probability of being a superstar than Shedeur Sanders, just based on traits, athleticism, and potential alone. I think that's a pretty good take. I think most people would probably agree that Travis Hunter has a higher I'm not saying that Sanders doesn't have a probability of being great. I'm saying that Hunter has a higher probability of being great in a must-watch television. So if you want to bring people to the stadium and you want to have a fun, exciting product, because it's a business, the Giants are a business, in 2025, Hunter's going to make you an exciting product. Sanders sitting at QB3 behind Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson does not do anything for you this season. In fact, it actually hurts you because now you don't have that must-watch TV two-way player, or that elite pass rusher from Penn State who could be all-pro, could be Micah Parsons 2.0, just sniffing the surface of his potential, right? If you pass on the impact player, and here's the thing though, Anthony, right? If you draft Sanders and he ends up not playing in 2025, we're never going to know until 2026 if he's even good or bad, right? You might as well just wait and then draft a quarterback in next year's draft class if that's the case. And now the counterpoint will be, well, what if we win too many games and we're not in a place to draft a quarterback? Well, the foundation is going to be so strong that we'll have the balls to say we can move up, we can trade draft capital in the future to move up to a position where we can get a quarterback and then drop them into a place where the foundation is strong. Over the last couple of months, have certainly gone through many different takes and avenues and to get to my point where I am now and to think that, Anthony, I have come around on one thing that I do think is important to reference, and that I do think that dropping a young quarterback into a good situation is the most important thing for this team long term, because I watched what the Patriots did to Drake May last year, and we saw some flash from Drake May, but imagine Drake May was dropped into a spot with Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter at receiver. You know what I mean? Imagine he was dropped into a position where he had two of the best elite young playmakers that football has to offer. I'd be pretty willing to bet that Drake May's upside last year would have been far greater than what we saw, even though he did flash some potential. They might have been a playoff team if they had those two guys. That's the difference in what playmakers can do, especially young guys on rookie contracts, not to mention the financial freedom you now have, Anthony. If you have a young rookie quarterback, imagine this, and I always get into the financial stuff because I know, guys, this is important, in my opinion. If you go into 2026 and you have a young quarterback on a rookie contract, Travis Hunter on a rookie contract, Malik Neighbors on a rookie contract, you know what you can do in free agency? You can go out and get the best possible player that solves your biggest possible weakness. And now you're talking about becoming a much better team and positioning a young player to succeed. That's where I am now. That this team has the chance to kind of do it that way, win football games in 2025, and then trade the farm, and you have money still. And if you trade a future first-round pick, Anthony, you still have money you can compensate for that lost draft capital with expansive amounts of cap space to allocate, because you're not overpaying on a veteran quarterback, not overpaying a guy that may be on the decline. That's kind of like the logic I'm kind of building right now. But I just think like this is an opportunity the Giants have, and if they do it right, they could get out of this purgatory state. But John Mara wants success. He wants wins. He wants production in 2025. He wants a better product. He wants to be competitive and competent. They need to draft a player who's going to make them better this year, not sit on the bench. That's kind of how I feel about it right now.
Yes, shout out to Bro Dude Guy who said I've been smirking throughout that entire thing that you were just saying because I've been saying this for months. You are absolutely right. I am so glad to see Alex finally coming around. He was even using a lot of the terms that I like to use in my speeches in his own. So that was fantastic. Great stuff. Love to see it. I agree with you, Alex. I mean, listen, this is a roster You know what? Actually, there was a word that you said there. You said purgatory. In my opinion, the Giants are not in purgatory just yet. They are still in hell, and they need to take that elevator up to the floor of purgatory. And how you do that, you build the roster out. You get a good roster. How do you get to heaven? I've used this analogy a couple times where the Giants have been in hell. They've been a top 10 pick nearly every single season for the last 10 years. Purgatory would be having a good roster. You're no longer picking in the top 10. Getting up to heaven, that's when you plug in that quarterback, you become a superstar, and now you're a playoff team every single year. And that's what happened to the Chiefs. That's what happened to the Bills, the Eagles, the Ravens. This point that I've made so many times on the show, and I'm so happy, not just you, Alex, but so many people are coming around to it because I have been using sound logic and using a lot of different examples and going through very clear explanations of how the salary cap works, how draft capital works, and how roster construction is meant to be done at the NFL level. Because it's not meant to be done by selecting Jaden Daniels at number 2 overall and instantly overnight becoming a great team. Yes, that happened to the Commanders. No, that's not going to happen to the Giants unless a miracle strikes, but it's very rare that you see that happen. The Houston Texans, yes, it happened to them too, but you know what? Who it didn't happen to? How about the Carolina Panthers? How about the Chicago Bears twice with Justin Fields and with Caleb Williams? It's very rare that you instantly, immediately, and you just mentioned it, Drake May. It's very rare that you instantly, immediately receive that turnaround from drafting a quarterback. So the argument would be build up that roster, have a farm first before you sell a farm, and then sell that livestock and go ahead and get that crowned, perfect golden goose, and that's who you build the rest of your farm around. And then you become an annual playoff team. And again, that's exactly what happened with the Kansas City Chiefs. I remember for years, Alex, fans would just be like, the Chiefs are mid. They're not a force. They'll go to the playoffs. They'll lose in the first round. Who cares about them? The Bengals, too. Remember when they had the Andy Dalton era and they were constantly just in the middle of the league? Well, they were in the middle of the league, and then, they ended up losing a bunch and getting the first overall pick and drafting Joe Burrow and turning it around. But they still had that good roster that was getting them to the middle of the league with a bad quarterback in Dalton. So you've got to have a competent roster, then plug the quarterback into that roster, and then you can go ahead and win games. Again, the Chiefs being the prime example of that. The Bills going to the playoffs, then drafting Josh Allen the next year is another prime example. The Ravens making the bold move to move on from Joe Flacco when they did. He was still playing decent football. So I think that, there's so many different examples that you can use. Build the roster, then sell the farm, get the quarterback. Never in my life, Maddie, did I ever say that Daniel Jones was a top 5 quarterback in this league.
I was like,
absolutely
when?
Out of your mind.
No, Anthony said that Dak Prescott was a top 5 quarterback in this league, but not
because
Daniel Jones.
He finished 5th in MVP voting in 2022. Sure. So, he was at one point. He didn't maintain that status, but he was at one point. But let me go ahead and get into some of these super chats that we have waiting for us. Ian with a super chat. Appreciate you, Ian. And you know what? I also have to mention, when you were saying hello to everybody, Ian left a pretty funny comment, said, yes, that's right. I'm here too. Shout out me. Shout out to you, Ian. Appreciate you. You're here for every live stream. We do always love to see Ian and your, what TV show is that? His profile picture, man. That's Jimmy Neutron. What's the kid's name in Jimmy Neutron? The little whatever.
Poindexter or some crap. I don't know.
No, it's definitely not Poindexter. Whatever. Anyway, love the profile photo. Love seeing that profile photo show up in every single Giants live stream. He says 20-minute ride to my grandparents' Fireside Giants live stream or Chris Brown. Easy decision for me.
Yeah, I'm going Chris Brown, bro.
No.
Of course. No, Red Hot Chili Peppers over FSG, obviously, but FSG over Chris Brown.
Yeah, of course. He says, LL non-playing. I think everyone needing a starter this year passes on Shedeur Sanders. And, I think it's actually important to bring this into the conversation, Alex. There was some big news right before we went live. Did you see it? No. Geno Smith signing that extension with the Raiders.
Yes,
it ties into this whole conversation and exactly what Ian's saying, too. I mean, listen, if you don't need a starting quarterback, should you reach on Shedeur, right? Like, the Giants, if they didn't sign Russell Wilson, we said, okay, maybe they do need a starting quarterback, but or I don't know if I phrased that right. Whatever. I think you guys get my point. But they have Russell Wilson. They don't need to draft Shedeur Sanders now, and neither do the Las Vegas Raiders. So where does that slide end if he does make it past the Giants, makes it past the Raiders? Is 9 to the Saints his landing spot? And if it's not 9 to the Saints, how far does he fall? That's the big question mark, because all those teams from 10 to 20 don't need a quarterback, which is where things get really interesting. So, and you're right, we have seen it. Will Levis is a great example. Supposed to be a top 5 pick, went in the second round. Lamar Jackson.
I mean, we've seen some good and really bad players fall down the draft board. Will Levis being the really bad player, but obviously this is how the draft goes, guys. Teams get spooked by other teams making decisions, right? If the Giants decide, we've been linked to Sanders this whole time, and they decide, yeah, we actually don't want him anymore. What do you think everybody else thinks? Like, what do they know that we don't? Why are they passing on him? This is interesting, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen. There's totally a chance that Sanders goes 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, we don't know just yet, but we've seen it happen. Teams get spooked, and guys flop and fall down the board. I mean, for goodness sake, like, we didn't see. Like, remember Jalen Hyatt? Remember how far he fell to the third round? We thought he was going to be at the top of the second round. Like, the media narratives are oftentimes way off on where players are going to be drafted.
Dude, how many mock drafts did we react to that had John Michael Schmitz going to the Giants at the end of the first round in that draft, and even Jalen Hyatt, and the Giants ended up both of those guys, one in the second round, one in the third round. So draft projections in the media are always so much different than they are within the league, and I think that's important to note. And I understand it might sound silly. It's boxing Trav saying that right now. I get it, because we have heard so many times that Sanders is a top 3 lock, that the Giants are in love with him. And as you point out, Russell Wilson is only signed to a 1-year deal. All of these things are true. But if the Giants feel like they need to win games now in order to save their job, they might opt to get a guy who plays now. Shedeur's not going to play week 1, so he's not going to contribute wins until he gets on the field, which could be way later in the season, and so that might be when the season's already practically over for the Giants. So who knows? But Shedeur is going to throw tomorrow, so we will see what his pro day looks like.
His pro day, Brian Dable is not attending his pro day.
That's not crazy. Brian Dable doesn't attend.
I know.
Pro days.
No, I know that they like the private workouts more than the pro days. But like, I don't actually put any stock in pro days at all. I would ignore them completely if I could for every single player. Cam Ward, all of them. They're all. You think that these guys go into this? It's all designed for them to succeed. This is how people overvalue guys like Zach Wilson. You watch a throw in shorts of him backpedaling and doing something crazy that's completely designed to make him look good. Pro days are complete nonsense for. Unless it's from an athletic perspective, like running the 40. There's other things that maybe are interesting, but from a quarterback perspective, it's all designed to make them look good, which is why a lot of guys don't even attend these things, because it's completely useless in terms of evaluation.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I do think the pro days are important for some players. I think for the quarterbacks, because it's so simulated, it's very hard to scout a quarterback at a pro day. But there are other players there who are, competing. Like, for example, you have guys like Tyleik Williams running his 40-yard dash at Ohio State got hurt during that. We got to see what his status is going forward. But Xavier Restrepo running like a historically low 40-yard dash. How does that affect his draft stock? So those are two negative examples that I brought up because those stuck out in my mind. But there are also guys like Malik Neighbors last year running a 4.34, I think it was, 40-yard dash at his pro day. You don't think that made the Giants go, wait, let's take a look at his film again. Let's make sure that we see that on the game speed. And then confirming that and then saying, yeah, he is worth the number 6 overall pick. So the pro days can be important, but I do agree with you with the quarterbacks. It is so simulated and it's hard to scout. And the Giants are right to prefer to scout on their own and do those private workouts, I think. Plus, it gives them an opportunity to have private conversations with those prospects, which I think is more important than anything at the quarterback position. But we do have a super chat here from Philip Santana. Appreciate you, Philip, a longtime Fireside Giants viewer. Philip says, hey, guys, what's your thoughts on Jaden Higgins? Would you take a third on him? So Jaden Higgins in the third round, Alex. I know we've actually discussed him in the third round before on this channel. I like him a lot. He's got size. He's got great route running ability, very quick feet. I do like Jaden Higgins. And in the third round, let's assume the Giants maybe take Carter in the first. They don't take Travis Hunter, who they project at wide receiver, and maybe they don't address wide receiver until the third round. I think Jaden Higgins makes a lot of sense for them as a guy who can compete inside and outside, but runs really good routes and can separate, which I think is his best selling point and what the Giants need right now is separators on offense. So what are your thoughts on Jaden Higgins?
I'm a really big Jaden Higgins fan. If he was there in the third round, the Giants don't take a hunter that could play receiver. Higgins, 6'4", 215 pounds. What I like the most about him, he only dropped 2 passes last year. Really, really good, solid hands, and he's got some really good speed and kind of shimmy to his routes, and I think this guy could have a lot more upside. And obviously look at Hyatt, speedster downfield. Higgins he's got size. He can be a possession guy, but he's also a really underrated athlete. Tallied 1,185 yards last year, 67.4% reception rate at Iowa State rather, and 9 touchdowns. He also spent 29% of his snaps in the slot, which is interesting, and then 71% out wide. So he had a lot of really good versatility in that offense, which I like. I like to see him in the slot, on the boundary, doing a lot of different things. So if the Giants, I mean, there's other receivers in this draft class, but he looks like a supersized Darius Slayton to me. He's with better hands. That's kind of how I would like quick comp, like a bigger Slayton with better hands. And I know Slayton obviously is here to be the WR2. So, the Giants have an insurance policy if they don't go with the receiver or they want someone to develop behind the scenes. If they want to go with a slot guy, you guys know I love Restrepo and you guys know I love LeJontay Wester. So they have other alternatives in this draft if they want to go with someone inside. Because Wandale's in the final year of his deal. So it's possible that they let him walk after this season, depending on how things go. And maybe they draft someone to take over cost efficiency. Wandale's obviously a good player, but his catch radius is the size of a freaking pea. It's hard to actually get him the ball a lot of times because he can't, like little T-Rex. I love him though. Obviously great in the open field when the ball is in his hands. He's dynamic. He can, obviously do a lot of good stuff for you. So I do like him, but I wonder if the Giants would draft somebody with the intention of maybe replacing the slot receiver spot so they don't have to pay him. Would be interesting, but nonetheless, big Jaden Higgins fan. I appreciate the super chat.
Yeah, appreciate the super chat. Jaden Higgins is awesome, and I'll just say to the Wan'Dale Robinson point, you're right, he's in the final year of his contract, so I would like to see the Giants at least put somebody under a rookie contract who could play the slot next year if need be. Because maybe they do plan on bringing back Wan'Dale, but what if he doesn't want to come back for one reason or another and he walks in free agency? What's your backup plan? Don't wait until next year when you're desperate to get that backup plan. Get that backup plan now, which could be a draft pick in this year's draft where you have 9 selections. Giants have a lot of draft capital. No reason that they can't think ahead to the future because that's what the draft is for. The draft is not about just 2025. It's about 25, 26, 27, and so on and so forth. So I'm totally with you there. And I don't know why this keeps happening to me, man.
Joking.
Anyway. Yeah, go ahead and take it so I can get some water.
Yeah, listen, this is interesting. I know some people in the chat. Yes, I don't like the pro day for quarterbacks. I don't really care about it. Clearly, Brian Daboll doesn't either, and that's the head coach of the team. He doesn't go to them. They look. The truth is, the Giants already know everything they need to know about Sanders and Cam Ward, and probably Jackson Dart too. They've been scouting these guys in person for months, so I do think that they know if they know everything. I think so far they probably have a pretty good grasp on them.
No, let me hit the pause button on that. Coaches do not get involved in the draft process until after the pro days conclude.
For sure.
So therefore, Brian Daboll does not know everything he needs to know, though. But Brian Daboll doesn't know everything he needs to know about Shedeur Sanders yet. He still has a lot of work to do. Now is the time for Brian Daboll to be grinding film. All throughout the regular season, all throughout the last 2 months, he hasn't been watching college film. Daboll has been watching pro film. He's been taking a look at guys like Javon Holland and other players who were going to be on the free agency market, not college players. Now he's watching college film. Now he's meeting with college players and doing those evaluations. So, and that goes not just for Daboll, but for all of the coaches. They don't get involved in the draft process until very late. So oftentimes, Alex, you'll see general managers who are really high on a prospect. Like, let's just create a hypothetical scenario here. Let's say Joe Shane, the whole way through this draft process, has been like, I love Shedeur Sanders. He is an absolute star, and I really want to take him. And then all of these coaches get involved, and you got the quarterback's coach saying, no, he doesn't do this well, and he doesn't fit this part of our scheme. And then Brian Daboll says, hey, I don't think he can execute this part of the playbook. We'd have to rework the playbook. This player is going to be minimized because of him. All of these coaches get together and say, okay, we don't like him. The general manager, all that work that he did, it's still useful, but now he has to reshift and renavigate, and that can change a team's draft plan. So, no, I don't think that the Giants know everything that they need to know about Shedeur Sanders just yet, because not everybody in that building has had the time to go ahead and scout him. And that's why the private workouts and those meetings are so crucial. The Giants typically always draft players that they have in for private meetings, very rarely draft guys that they haven't met with one-on-one at their facilities. That's why when Shedeur Sanders goes in there, that's pretty much his judgment day. That's where the New York Giants will decide whether or not he's a legitimate choice at number 3 overall.
Yeah, and that was my point. Like, I don't think the pro day is the most important thing. I think, and what I said earlier was the private workouts are where the Giants really do most of their evals and where they really gather that information. So I don't put much stock in the pro days. Like you said, the private workouts is the judgment day for a lot of these players. But do we have another super chat in here? I believe somebody said, am I getting much sleep here with a newborn?
Yeah. So we do have that one, but we've got one before that we got to get to by SPP Williams. So thank you, Williams. Williams says, Mara telling Shane and Dable they need to win the season helps them do good for the team long term by not reaching for a quarterback. Coincidence? What do you think, Alex? Is there a little bit of a Wizard of Oz situation here? Is John Mara pulling the strings, trying to influence Joe Shane and Brian Dable's draft decision by giving them that mandate and trying to make sure that they don't do what they did in 2019 and reach on a quarterback? Do you think there's any truth to that theory?
Well, I'll tell you what, Anthony. What did John Mara say? Well, it was one of the most critical things, and I think there is a correlation here based on what the Giants have done this offseason. What did John Mara tell the public, and we've been saying it the last couple episodes, live streams? He said, I'm tired of watching other teams march down the field on our defense, right? So what did the Giants do? They went out and signed two of the best defensive backs in free agency, right? And they're probably going to draft a defensive tackle too. So Joe Shane heard what he said and he put it into practice. He went and he signed Javon Holland and he went and he signed Paulson Adebo, right? And then they fired Jerome Henderson and brought in a new DB coach. So a lot of what John Mara said publicly, the Giants have reacted to accordingly, right? Now, I don't know exactly what that means for this upcoming year, but this upcoming draft, rather. But if the Giants need to win football games, and that's really what he said, I want to see progress from this team. And progress means winning and getting people to not, give up their tickets with 8 weeks left in the season. It means having people in the stands in weeks 16, 17, and 18. That's what progress looks like from a business perspective, not losing money because nobody wants to watch your games. And look, going to MetLife is already hard enough with the weather and watching a bad product. They need to convince people to get out there to watch. And, that means, in my opinion, getting someone that's worth watching, someone that's going to bring people to the stadium in 2025 and at least make them some money and have fun doing it. A guy that they can brand, a guy that can be an identity. Could be Abdul Carter, could be Travis Hunter. I think they're going to draft someone that's going to help them accomplish that now, make progress, and then drop a young quarterback in 2026 where they don't have to let them sit for a year. They can just drop them into a good situation and say, you can learn in real time like this. If oftentimes I think that sitting a year is good when the team isn't that good and like they don't have the proper pieces in place. But the Giants next year, if they had Hunter and Neighbors and a bunch of stuff, like they'll have a better foundation to drop a player in there and have live experience for that young player where it actually is it's competent, it's doable. They can learn and succeed in real time and struggle in real time because that's what you expect from a young player. But a lot of veteran faces, a lot of young talent that can uplift. Travis Hunter taking a screen 70 yards to the house, Neighbors taking a screen 70 yards to the house. That gives your young quarterback confidence. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something the Giants might be thinking about. So yeah, like I do think that Joe Shane listened to John Mara, what he said. We've seen him directly do what he wanted, make the defense better and splash signing and multiple defensive back positions, safety, and obviously at cornerback too. So I do think there's a lot of what John Mara said at the end of the last season that is being listened to and is being applied to the Giants' plan this offseason.
Yeah, and I think just more to the point in that super chat, I think that, it's tough to say whether a team is reaching on a quarterback or not. I've had this take. I think when they drafted Daniel Jones, yes, it was a reach. Yes, at the time I was frustrated by it. But after a year or so, I was like, okay, you know what? It's fine if he develops into something, but you got to be able to move on quickly. And that was my take last year. If the Giants draft a quarterback at 3, if they draft one here at 3, they need to be able to move on quickly. So even if they do reach on Shedeur, all right, there's a chance that he becomes a star overnight and it's no longer a reach. Or there's a chance after 2 years he's a middle-of-the-road quarterback that's not going to cut it long-term. You've got to be willing to move on sooner rather than later, and that's what that boils down to. So I think it's always interesting to talk about reaching on quarterbacks because when you really look at it from a different perspective, like teams like the Steelers reaching on Kenny Pickett but being fine now because they moved on, in an according timeline. So it's really just about roster construction as well. But, I am curious to see, of course, where the Giants go in this draft and how John Mara may or may not be influencing that decision. But Alex, here's the super chat that you were waiting for, that you are specifically named, and it's from Golden Spatian saying, "Love all the Fireside channels. Yes, shout out to Fireside Yankees as well, Fireside Knicks as well, Fireside Bets as well. There are many other Firesides, but we do love and appreciate our Fireside Giants community first and foremost." Says, "Keep it up, guys. Alex, hopefully you're getting your sleep with your newborn. Hoping we draft Hunter in the first." And Alex, get ready for this one because you're going to be proud of me. "Sometimes I get into these live streams early in the morning with Alex, and he looks like Frodo sleeping on the way to Mount Doom. Looks tired as hell." How'd I do? Was it good? Good one? Good
Not
reference?
bad, not bad. And honestly, that's a good one because I have been very, very tired. But you won't believe this. Newborn, no longer. She's almost a year old in 3 weeks. So it's been a very, very fast year. It goes by fast. If you guys have kids, you would know. Suddenly they're born and suddenly they're walking and saying words and stuff like that. So, definitely crazy to experience in real time watching your child grow like that. But yeah, freaking exhausting. Just moved out of the city. So, the city, not my cup of tea anymore, I have to say. It's so high, it's so fast paced and so loud and so crazy. I've been there for a decade. It's so nice to like sit in quiet. Like my brain, I feel so much better about like mentally, and not to mention like I sleep better outside of the city because like sirens. I mean, you guys know. Someone said it the other day. The sirens would go by and scare the crap out of everybody because they thought they were being pulled over and stuff like that from our podcasts. So nice not to have sirens, and obviously nice to be in a quiet space. So yeah, really appreciate the super chat. I am sleeping way better and feeling better too, so we can do more live streams. And that was kind of holding me back. I was just so tired and gassed all the time. I couldn't do these live streams as much as I wanted to, but now I feel a lot better, and Anthony and I are grinding these away and having a really good time doing it. So appreciate you, Spatial, a Golden Spatian, really cool name too. So I appreciate you as always.
For sure, and I appreciate you giving me some praise there for my Lord of the Rings reference. I'm not exactly the Lord of the Rings kind of sewer that you are, but I'm trying my best here. I'm a novice, and we're gonna get there. Little by little, I'll become more adept in my references. So we've got another great super chat here with a Lord of the Rings reference. So Alex is a happy man today. Mike G, appreciate you once again for another super chat. Mike G saying, "Sanders stock falling faster than Sauron after the ring hit the lava." Reference for you, Alex. Let's just take Hunter, get the dynamic weapon.
Ah, goodness gracious. I mean, I love this. And we're going to keep doing Lord of the Rings stuff. Also, making stickers for you guys, Lord of the Rings themed. If you guys have any ideas for us with this, maybe like neighbors like holding the ring or something like that, we'll give some cool stickers away that are Lord of the Rings. Or maybe the Eye of Sauron looking down on Joe Shane. That's probably a cool one, actually. That sounds pretty in context with him right now because all the spotlight's on him to figure his shit out before he gets absolutely smoked by some orcs.
John Mara is just the eye.
Yeah, he's the eye of Sauron, and Joe Shane is a hobbit in the weeds. But I gotta say, appreciate you guys, and I think we missed actually a super chat by Jack Anthony just to go back there after we get this one. But Mike, yeah, definitely a good reference there, and I think the dynamic weapon would be awesome. I do believe that Hunter offers. Look, like if you really can't go wrong, because if you need a receiver, well, he can be a really good receiver for you. Hell, you need a cornerback? He could be a really great cornerback for you. Like, what happens if the Giants lose Paulson Adebo or they lose Deonte Banks to injury? If things happen, now you have a guy that can go in there and start for you immediately. What happens if Neighbors goes down? You don't have an insurance policy. Well, you got one. This could be one of the most unique players the league has ever seen, and I want the Giants to be the ones to figure it out. I want the Giants to be the ones to maximize him, just like the Detroit Lions are maximizing Jahmyr Gibbs and how they're maximizing Jameson Williams and all these other cool, creative, elite athletes. I want the Giants to have a player like that they can say, we figured it out with that guy. We made him a superstar. The Giants need more freaking Pro Bowlers, and this guy is on day one could be a Pro Bowler. If you don't believe me, just go watch the kid. The guy is a freak of nature. You don't see players like this athletically very often. And I think he's going to be an impact piece on day one for any team that drafts him. If the Patriots end up sitting there with Travis Hunter at 4, they're going to be thanking the gods. Like, I can promise you that. They're going to be like, oh my God, Drake May gets Travis Hunter. Like, we're just handing them an elite playmaker that they can give to their new star quarterback they drafted last year. It's like, another one slips by, but Sometimes when you see a Micah Parsons on the board, you just take the freaking Micah Parsons. It's that simple.
Sometimes it is just that simple. You're absolutely right. And speaking of all these playmakers, the ones that you want to see the New York Giants maximize, how about Malik Neighbors getting back to that super chat that I did miss, and I apologize for missing this one. Jack Whitman leaving the super chat. Jack, appreciate you once again tuning in. Jack also did join the channel as a member recently, so thank you for that, Jack. And he did leave this comment that I want to bring up before I get to super chat, saying he did like the video, but the likes don't appear to be showing on YouTube for this video as an FYI to us. That is strange, but you know what? If we just keep smashing that like button, everybody, maybe they will appear. So go ahead and smash that like button. But Jack says, as mentioned before, Neighbors can play slot. Higgins would be a great pick out wide, as would Arroyo, and play 2 tight end sets. The Miami tight end, of course. I still think the G-men go Hunter. I also think the Giants are leaning Travis Hunter, but I did read reports today that apparently the Cleveland Browns might also be leaning Travis Hunter. So if the Browns take Hunter, there's no Hunter left for the New York Giants, but there is a Carter, so we, of course, could see if that's the route. But I will say this about Neighbors playing in and out of the slot and Higgins, because I think both of those players provide a lot of versatility in the fact that each of them can play outside and in the slot. And that just makes your offense a little bit more dynamic and allows you to move these guys around based on matchups. And when you're able to just place guys in different locations based on matchups and let them get to work, I think that's fantastic. So I really do like Jaden Higgins because of that versatility. It is one of the reasons that I liked Neighbors so much. It was one of the things, Alex, that I remember last year in the pre-draft process. It always was so insanely confusing me when we would get some comments here or there and people were like, oh, we don't want Neighbors, he's a slot receiver. I was like, no, he is not a slot receiver. He is built like Jamar Chase. He is an outside receiver. He will play on the outside. He just also happens to be such a stellar route runner that he will kill you from the slot too. So that's what we got in Neighbors. And then for Elijah Arroyo, I actually wrote an article about him this morning. I love Elijah Arroyo. I think he's a really talented player. He's had some injury history, which is obviously a cause for concern. But man, the film doesn't lie. Guy's athletic. He's a vertical seam splitter. He could be a real weapon for the Giants in those 2 tight end sets that you mentioned. I would really like him. But Alex, how are you feeling about that? You know, Elijah Arroyo, what's your take on him? And of course, Neighbors and Higgins moving in and out of the slot and outside with one another.
Yeah, I mean, Arroyo's a sick player. If you watched any Cam Ward, he pops up all the time. We talked about it yesterday. Listen, you can't really go wrong. If you have Elijah Arroyo and you have Theo Johnson, you're pretty happy at tight end, and both are on rookie contracts. So, you know, would not be upset about that. I wonder where he would go if it's like a 3rd round pick because we have the extra 3rd rounder. Yeah, like maybe you could justify that because of how, you know, exciting and a high upside Arroyo is. But yeah, I appreciate the super chat as always. And I think there was another thing in there. Neighbors played in the slot 27% last year. So I do think that it would be interesting to see how they can get him more involved out of the slot if they get a guy like Jaden Higgins, you know, a big possession guy with some good speed too. Would not underrate his athleticism. They could get Neighbors into many different positions. You know, you really want to have an embarrassment of riches at receiver because eventually one of them is going to get hurt. Like every year, you watch other teams, they always get hurt. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, you know, Neighbors would miss some games last year. Like every year, players get hurt. Guys, you need to have a lot of good depth at receiver for your offense to be competent. So the more the merrier at the position, in my opinion, which is why I'm so high on Hunter because, like, you know, having an insurance policy for a WR1 because you have 2 WR1s is a damn good situation to have. Like, if you're the Vikings and Jordan Addison goes down, you still have Justin Jefferson and vice versa. So it's really, really good problem to have. You need to have 2 playmakers at the receiver position to be, like, good in the NFL these days. Darius Slayton's good, but I don't think he's, like, changing the dynamic of this offense to a degree. Hunter does change that dynamic quite significantly. But guys, also, if you're new to the channel and you're just popping in to watch the live stream, make sure to subscribe down below. You know, trying to get some more subs on here and build this community with you guys. And we're doing live streams so often now. We want all you guys that are new to the channel to be a part of it. So, you know, if you know anyone that's a Giants fan, you know, obviously would love more people in this community. And, you know, we're going to do more giveaways and, you know, give away some merch and, you know, do some sticker stuff and come up with some cool concepts. So we would love the support from you guys, and any, you know, word of mouth marketing would be awesome to help us build this community even further because really important to us. We love all you guys. But Anthony, I think we have another super chat. A couple.
We do.
A couple of them.
We have a couple more
too.
Yeah, we got a big one here from Egypt Steel 85. Thank you so much, Egypt Steel 85, for the big 50 burger that you dropped on us. Love you guys. Great channel. Love your thought process. And We love you too, and we really do appreciate, first of all, the big super chat and your comment as well. We're always happy to hear that people like our thought process and things like that, because it tells us that from an analytical sense, we're doing a good job in providing you guys with the analysis that we want to be providing you guys with. So that's always something that I'm really happy to hear. And again, just really do appreciate you, Egypt Steel 85, for tuning in. I've seen you in here many, many times, and the super chat absolutely does mean the world to us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, good sir. And honestly, one of the best things I'll say about this podcast is that Anthony and I oftentimes disagree. And we're not always just, spewing the same exact perspectives and the same exact takes. We fight a lot on this podcast about different things. And I think it's pretty cool. I think that's what makes, this podcast really entertaining to listen to and watch, because Anthony and I oftentimes get into matches about certain topics. And if you guys have been fans of us for a long time, you know that we disagree on a lot of stuff. So I do think that that's a really cool perspective that we do bring, that we're not just like fair weather fans either. Like we are here through the thick and thin of it. Like we have been doing this through the worst possible years of this team. So we are going to enjoy the hell out of the good ones with you guys. It's going to be a really fun time when this team is actually good in this podcast. And like you can see, we've been pretty positive lately, Anthony. And it's a lot more fun, way more fun. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully Joe Shane can find it. Like heaven is there, but like we're still kind of in hell right now. But we need to get there. We're sniffing it. But I do think that is a really nice super chat. So really appreciate you, Steele. And hopefully you keep tuning in, and we deliver good episodes and good content every single day for you.
Yeah, appreciate it so much. And Alex, before I get to this next super chat, got to bring up this comment here from Mr. Absurd. You asked for sticker ideas, and I do like this one. Mr. Absurd says, do a picture of neighbors catching a ball over the shoulder, but the Photoshop the ball into the ring with a caption of neighbors saying, "My precious." And no, I didn't do my impression that time. I'm not going to do it again. I got a little bit too much crap for it yesterday, so no Smeagol impression from me today. But I do really like that idea from Mr. Absurd. Alex, what are you thinking about that one?
I'm loving that idea. Any ideas like over the shoulder and the ring? Yeah, I could see it. I could see it for sure. We'll come up with some cool stuff for you. I like the Eye of Sauron looking down upon Joe Shane. That's a pretty good one. I'm trying to think. Maybe Shelob the Spider. Who could that be? Dave Gettleman being a freaking dick. Definitely something like that. Minas Tirith could be NetLife. And we're fending off. There's so many ideas. Like they won't stop coming. But I definitely think we can make something cool with that one for sure. So I appreciate that comment and any ideas.
Yeah, we'll definitely come up with something soon and give them away here on the channel when we have the stickers made. So we do have another super chat, but another comment that I want to bring up. Want to make sure that we are bringing up comments that are not super chats as well here. This is from Jump 089 saying, "Yo, all the best from Frankfurt, Germany," which is so awesome. "Listening while commuting to work every freaking day. Keep it up, guys. Hope for Travis and trade up for Dart." I think that's where Alex is leaning to, Travis and Dart. I think that might also be where I'm leaning at this point, but really do appreciate your support and happy to provide you with some great Giants analysis while you commute to work every day in Frankfurt, Germany. So cool.
Yeah, I have like tons of family in Frankfurt, Germany, which is super odd. But they love it there. I've been there many times. Really, really cool city in the apple vine. If you're from Frankfurt, you know all about. There's this one restaurant that only serves apple vine. It's like fermented apples basically, and it's alcoholic. You get absolutely hammered off this stuff, and then you just have a couple like I feel like just there's all sorts of good food in Germany. The German food's really interesting. There's not like a huge array of diversity, but what they do is really good. The sausages and whatnot, and obviously Oktoberfest is sick too if you guys have been. But yeah, awesome. Appreciate you. Frankfurt's sick, and if you see my cousins, please let them know I say what is good. And I think we have some more super chats here.
Yeah, the next one here from SPP Williams says, sticker idea, another one. Mara with Eye of Sauron. Shane and Dable are the hobbits climbing Mount Doom, which is the NFC East. That one's pretty fire. I'm not going to lie. I like that one a
Mara,
lot.
the Eye of Sauron. Shane and Dable are the hobbits. Actually, okay, this is kind of messed up, but Dable would have been a great Samwise Gamgee in a sequel. He kind of looks like an older Sam. He could be like Sam's dad.
Maybe before Dable did the Pilates.
Like he could have been the Hobbit. Like he. Yeah, Fat Dable would have been Sam's dad. I think that's where we've come to now. That's a funny one. I like that though. We could definitely whip something up like that. We'll come up with some good stuff, and we'll have our guy Danny, the mastermind behind our graphics, whip something up for you guys.
Yep.
But Anthony, you can keep it going for us.
Yeah, for sure. And keep leaving all of your ideas for the stickers, but also if you've got other movies that you guys are really into and you want us to incorporate some references to those into our dialogue as well, let us know because I'm a big film buff and this is like a really fun little side quest for me, is trying to work in all these little Lord of the Ring references, and I'm happy to bring in some other references as well. So keep them coming, guys. And the next super chat we have here is from the Hot Nichols. Appreciate you for the super chat. Says, I love the fire you guys bring. I can't wait for the draft. Keep that content coming. Let's go Giants. Yes, sir. Let's go G-Men. And I can't wait for the draft as well because I'll be bringing that fire on draft night. I'll be live for the entirety of round 1 of the NFL draft. Not just the Giants pick, but all the way up until pick 32 is made, just in case the Giants get a little freaky and they make some trades up into the back end of the round. I want to make sure that I'm live for that as well. So Thursday night of the NFL draft, I believe that is the 24th, exactly 3 weeks from today. You can catch me live on the channel reacting to the entirety of the first round. I can't wait for it. But yeah, thank you so much for the super chat, Hot Nichols.
Absolutely. Plenty of fire here, and it's going to be getting even more hot as we get closer to the draft and as the rumors continue to heat up. That was actually a really good flow of a sentence right there. But I do think that it's going to be fun the next couple of weeks. Sometimes I've surprised myself of just talking all the time, actually. But yeah, I do think that like the next couple of weeks are, I would say the rumors have been pretty back and forth. We've been hearing Sanders getting more attention, then his stock is dropping. It's been like a seesaw the last couple of weeks regarding a lot of these top prospects. But, you know, I know you guys want us to talk a lot about some of the lesser known prospects in the mid rounds. Something that we haven't really dived into just yet, but yesterday we said that we would start to kind of look at some gems that we like. And I'm going to keep saying his name. I love LeJohntay Wester in the mid round. He is one of those guys, those dog receivers, slot guy. Anthony just smirks every time I say his name because if you're a fan of this podcast, I've said his name many times. Big fan of Wester. He's got some really good stuff, and I do think that he's going to be a good player in the NFL if he lands at a good spot for him. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants took him. Look, they went to so many Colorado practices. They got to look at pretty much every one of their receivers in the draft class at an extensive level. Now, I'll ask you this, Anthony. A lot of people think that Jackson Dart's going to go top 20. Do you think that the chances of the Giants moving up into the first round to get him are becoming less realistic?
I don't think he's going to go top 20. I understand where this is coming from, and it's because we've seen drafts in the past where there's so many teams that need quarterbacks, so there just ends up being a run, and guys get taken way sooner than expected. But I don't think this is that draft class. I know why people are saying that because, you know, they feel like a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers could end up taking Jackson Dart at 21 overall. Guys, the Steelers are going to sign Aaron Rodgers, and then they're going to draft an impact player to pair with him at 21. That's what I think is going to happen. Honestly, my prediction, Alex, I think that Jackson Dart is going to be a very late first-round pick, closer to 30 than he is to 20. Obviously, I could be wrong, but if he is going to have his draft stock elevate in a way where he's a top 20 pick, I would imagine that he's only a top 20 pick because Shedeur Sanders went number 3 to the Giants. That would be the only reason why I would think Jackson Dart's demand would be so high in the top 25 selections. Otherwise, I would think that those teams, if Shedeur Sanders was sliding, would be moving up to get him instead, and then Dart would fall later into the first round or into the second round where we initially projected him. So I think it's tough to tell. Draft projections are always so tough, and they're always ever changing. That's for absolute sure. And we won't know where everybody's going until the NFL draft. But yeah, I mean, I think that Dart's stock is definitely elevating. I don't think that he's a top 20 pick though, but we'll see because a lot of people fought with me and said that JJ McCarthy wasn't going top 10 last year, and he went 10 exactly. So you know, we'll see. Stranger things have happened. And a couple more chats that I want to point out here. We've got SPP Williams with a funny one saying, surely we can have the Avengers with Dex as the Hulk. Who would be the other stars? Burns as Spider-Man is obvious. That's a pretty good one.
That is a good one. I'm trying to think who else. Russell Wilson, who's Micah McFadden, Captain America. He just kind of has that like strength about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who else what would Russell Wilson be? Who would Russell Wilson be in this? Like, you know, he'd be the freaking guy that shoots the arrows.
I was going to say Hawkeye. That's exactly
Hawkeye.
what I was going to say. That's nice.
He'd be Hawkeye. Russell Wilson would be Hawkeye for sure.
Yeah.
Wandale would be Ant-Man for sure.
Yeah, Wandale's Ant-Man.
Wandale is absolutely Ant-Man. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
all right,
And
how
then
long are we on? We've go ahead. What were you gonna say?
we're nearing an hour, but we do have another comment here that I wanted to
Okay.
just bring up from Steven RC saying Kobe Bryant is my sleeper guy. Like I said, Tariq Woolen
Tariq
was.
Woolen.
Yeah, he was a big Tariq Woolen guy. I remember that in those previous live streams and videos that we did when Reek was coming out. Kobe Bryant is also one of my sleepers, though, Alex. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Kansas cornerback. It is not the late and great Los Angeles Lakers shooting guard. It is the cornerback coming out of Kansas this year. Doesn't have the best athleticism, but let me tell you, when you're talking about ball skills and an ability to sit in a zone and make plays, you're going to want to look no further than Kobe Bryant. And I think the fourth round of the draft is when he's going to be available. And the Giants did meet with him privately at the scouting combine. That didn't get a lot of reporting, but it did happen. And I think it's pretty exciting. So I like Kobe Bryant a lot. He's definitely one of my sleepers in this draft class. And I think you should definitely check him out, Alex.
I absolutely will check him out. And there's a lot of sleepers in every single draft class that, ultimately kind of go under the radar. I'm pretty excited to see what players emerge and where the Giants are looking. I know they're looking at linebackers too. There's a UCLA linebacker. I think they had for a private workout. So those are where we're gonna see a lot of these players the Giants actually like, the private workouts. Like that's going to tell us the full story about some of these guys that they're targeting in the mid rounds and whatnot. But I'm pretty intrigued by this draft class. A lot of people are saying this draft class is not very good, Anthony, and I think that that's a little bit overblown. I think there's not that many great quarterbacks in the first round, like with grades like that. But this is a really strong class for a couple positions. Running back. There might be 10 starting running backs in this draft class. Why do you think the Bills aren't paying James Cook right now, by the way? Because they're like, we've been able to replace him in this draft with a guy that's literally out pennies on the dollar. Defensive tackle, there might be 5 or 6 starters, maybe more than that, 8 or 9 starters that you can get in the mid-round. So the Giants, they're going to walk away with a DT in this class. I guarantee you that. And they're going to walk away with another running back. I'd probably guarantee you that too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've been saying. There's a notion that this draft class is weak, and I'm like, no, it might be weak at the top. It's not top heavy, but this draft class is really strong. A lot of starting level talent on day 2 of the draft, and you don't usually get that after about the second round. It starts to become more developmental guys in round 3. This year, you should expect to get starting level talents in round 3, maybe into round 4, because it is such a strong draft class. It's deep at tight end. It's deep at wide receiver in the later rounds. It's deep at running back in every single round. It's deep at cornerback in some ways, too. So, there's a lot of talent in defensive tackle, obviously. So, it's a really strong draft class. The Giants have an opportunity here to really upgrade their roster. So, I can't wait for this draft. Only 3 weeks away. I'm very excited for it. So, really looking forward to this upcoming draft. But I think we're about ready to go ahead and wrap this thing up, barring any buzzer-beating super chats like the one that we literally just got as I was saying that. So we're going to go ahead and get through any last chats or super chats that do roll in before we wrap this thing up. It's just letting you guys know momentarily this will be coming to a pause. But Golden Spation saying, audio has been a little choppy here and there. Do you think they should draft Gabriel as a developmental quarterback with one of their 3 third-round picks? Golden Spation, appreciate the super chat. We will look into the audio for sure. We've clearly been having some issues with the audio over these last couple streams. We're taking that feedback into account, and we've been messing with our settings, trying to figure out what the problem could be. We'll get there. Just bear with us, please.
Well,
but
we're using a new service, so we'll switch back to the old one because I think we still have it for a couple more days and see if the audio is better. And if it is, then we'll run it back the OG way. Just whatever's best for you guys, obviously, is our priority. So we'll test it, see if it's better, and if that's the case, we'll run it back.
For sure. And then for the other half of the super chat, asking about Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. I was actually looking at some stats for Dylan Gabriel from PFF, and they have their thing called stable metrics in their draft guide. I think he grades out the best in all of the stable metrics, which was very interesting. He's not a guy who's high on any draft boards, and he's not a guy that I'm particularly interested in. First of all, I don't like left-handed quarterbacks. Second of all, he's severely undersized for the position. There's a lot of flaws with Dylan Gabriel, but when you're looking at stable metrics, the stats that translate to the NFL, he's an ace in all of them, which is pretty interesting. So it is kind of prompting me. I think I'm going to have to go back and watch some more Dylan Gabriel and take a look at him before I give you an official comment and thought and feeling on how I view Dylan Gabriel as a prospect in this class.
Yeah, really interesting. Dylan Gabriel. He's very small. And I think that will limit his ceiling in terms of where he goes in the draft. But we've seen small quarterbacks overcome that. Obviously, Kyler Murray is the one that stands out, but I think Kyler is a different caliber of prospect, obviously, or was, and player now. Dylan Gabriel's interesting, lefty quarterback, so you kind of have to have a really good right tackle. I love Jermaine Illuminor, but he's not Andrew Thomas. So it's totally different when it comes to lefties. And I think that the Giants, if they like him, he fits the developmental quarterback avenue that we've discussed the Giants could go down. We're kind of like Jalen Milroe has an elite trait. Let's go that direction if they're going to go dev quarterback, or let's go with like a Tyler Shuck or like a Will Howard. That might be something they would go after. Quinn Ewers, obviously, as well. So there are dev QBs in this class. If they like one of them and they draft Hunter or Carter, I do think that the Giants will take one of those guys at the very least and just stash and see.
Yeah, I definitely think they're taking a developmental quarterback at some point in this draft, and Gabriel absolutely could be one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up this last super chat, but first, well, we've got a couple coming in right now. The buzzer beaters always come in. It's so much fun. You guys
every day
just never want us to end the stream. We're like, we're a little tired, and you guys are like, nope.
I'm gonna miss bath time, bro. I'm not gonna put my kid to sleep.
I just wanted to bring up one chat though from the Giant Topic saying, from one content creator to another, keep up the great work. Really do appreciate that comment, and hey, keep up the great work yourself. It's always a grind. Content is always about just being consistent. So as long as you're consistent, you'll end up getting that following. So everybody go check out the Giant Topic as well. Appreciate you tuning in here and for your viewership of Fireside Giants. But Nick Bavas with a super chat here. Hopefully I said your name right. Apologies if I didn't, but do really appreciate this super chat saying, quickly, what's your comments on Joe Milton to the Dallas Cowgirls, as Nick put it. I think a lot of Giants fans on Twitter and social media have made a big to-do out of the Giants and not making this trade. And to be honest, I don't know if it really made sense for them. I think that they would much rather draft their own quarterback. I actually think it falls into the logic that you were bringing up earlier, Alex. If you passed on J.J. McCarthy at 6 last year, why would you take Sanders at 3 now if you think McCarthy was a better player? And I think, again, it's similar logic, because if you passed on Joe Milton in the 6th round last year, why would you trade a 5th for him now, I think is the question mark for this Giants team that is positioned to draft a quarterback prospect that maybe they think is better than Milton. So, if Milton was traded after the draft and the Giants hadn't drafted a quarterback, it would be a valid question. I'd be like, okay, what are we doing? Maybe we should have traded for him. But considering the draft hasn't happened and there are so many prospects for the Giants to choose between, I think that is something that is going to happen. The Giants are going to take a developmental quarterback. And also keep in mind, the Patriots, according to the report, traded him to Dallas because that's where he wanted to go. So he wanted to be a Dallas Cowboy. And I don't think it means much for the Giants in that regard. Dak Prescott is under a ridiculously large contract for the next several years, and Prescott's still a good quarterback. He's going to be their starter unless he continues to get injured. Then maybe we see some Joe Milton, but I don't think this is something that Giants fans need to be worried about at all. But if you're looking at it from a perspective of why didn't we make that trade, I think it's pretty clear that it's because the NFL draft is right around the corner.
I also think that trade was stupid for the Patriots. Like they sent Joe Milton and a 7th round pick for a 5th rounder. What was the point of that? They might as well just stash Joe Milton in to be Drake May's backup. What do they even? They got what? He was a 6th round pick last year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yep,
So they hopped 1 round and gave up a 7th this year. I mean, 7th rounders are like basically UDFAs, so I get that. But why not? You put a year into developing Joe Milton. Why not? And he learned your system, he learned your scheme. He's part of your locker room. Why not just keep him at that point for next to nothing? I think that was a dumb trade. And I think that for the Cowboys, look, Joe Milton, I know people are upset about it, but guys, he had one good game against backups. I watched Trey Lance have a good game against backups. I think someone brought that up on Twitter. Guys have good games against backups. Drew Lock destroyed the starting Colts defense, but you don't see me asking for Drew Lock back. You know what I mean? That's why I don't really put much stock into it. I don't think that I'm not concerned about not getting him. I don't care about not getting him. I think that it was a dumb deal for the Patriots to trade him in the first place, to be honest. I think they should have just kept him at that point. They got basically nothing in return. A 5th rounder is whatever, and they could have had a backup at next to no cost for the next 3 seasons on basically $0. He was going to make nothing as a 6th round pick for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I don't know why they made that trade. I don't think it makes sense for the Patriots, but hey, the Cowboys have their high upside developmental quarterback, which they already had last year with Trey Lance. Clearly, they don't have much faith in Trey Lance after trading Didn't they give up like a fourth for Trey Lance? Ridiculous. Whatever. Jerry Jones, crackhead. I don't know what he's doing anymore. He's gone absolutely loony. So we've got one last super chat that we're going to go ahead and dive into before we wrap up the stream. This one coming from Elias Smilios. I hope that I said your name right. I feel like I didn't. I hope I did. I'm sorry if I didn't, but really appreciate the super chat. He left a comment underneath the super chat, so I'm going to read off that comment, and it says, Alex, Anthony, love FSG. I'm hooked. Appreciate you. I hope the Giants take anyone but quarterback in the first round, pick 3. That tells us we're not reaching for a guy that doesn't belong here, like Daniel Jones. And again, yeah, if you're looking at the draft boards, Daniel Jones was ranking in that 30 to 40 range on a lot of draft boards, and the Giants took him at 6. This year, Shedeur Sanders is ranking in the 30 to 40 range, and the Giants could take him at 3. And so I do understand why some fans feel like that would be a major reach and why they're apprehensive to the idea of drafting Shedeur Sanders. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. Everybody's going to have their different evaluation of each quarterback prospect, but I'll just say I totally do understand where you might be coming from as a Giants fan. Little PTSD from Daniel Jones, maybe not wanting to reach on a potential quarterback prospect that isn't ranked so highly, so I get it. But, we'll ultimately see what happens on draft night. But you won't hear any complaints from me if they do land a Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. I will be very excited.
No, we will not be. We will not be upset about that for sure. But yeah, I mean, very, very interesting chat today. Really liked all the comments and questions you guys gave us. And Elias, really appreciate you tuning in. You're hooked. That's what we're here for. We just want to give you guys good Giants content, entertaining content. Really get to know you guys. You guys get to know us and enjoy the progress. Hopefully we're able to enjoy like the ascension of this team together, and not just the bad moments. We're able to like really watch this team get better in real time, and you guys are a part of that with us because we've been waiting for a long time for this. And I think we chose a good time to start doing more live streams, Anthony, to be quite honest with you. We kind of been putting it off for a long time and doing the individual episodes and all of that, but now that we kind of see pathways to being a competent football team long-term and, long-term sustainability, now's a good time to like enjoy that ride with you guys. So it's going to be a really fun couple of months as we get closer to the season. We have competency at quarterback with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, far better than what we've had in the past. And I know we do have one more chat here, Anthony, as the buzzer beaters continue to roll in. Sam Fountain, an OG of the podcast. Appreciate you, good sir.
Yeah, I really do appreciate you. I'll say this, Alex, just because you mentioned it. Doing the live streams now, more of them now. Absolutely, you're right. It's great because it's going to get that following for draft night, which I can't stress enough, guys. If you're tuning in and you're enjoying the live streams, just wait until draft night. We're going to have some surprises and some cool stuff planned for draft night. So make sure you do tune in while you're watching on ESPN, NFL Network, or whatever, on your phone, on the side. Have my face up, have Fireside Giants up, and tune in on draft night to our live stream. But Sam Fountain, really do appreciate you. An absolute OG of the Fireside Giants community with a super chat here saying, if Sanders falls into the high 20s, should we jump back into the first to grab him? Me, I'm going to say absolutely yes. I'm literally comfortable taking him at number 3. So if he does fall that far, yes, I'm trading up into the first round to draft him. Alex, I imagine you feel similarly to me, but I would say under this scenario, the Giants probably land Hunter at 3. And man, how exciting would it be to pair Sanders and Hunter together? Would that not be amazing?
I mean, I've been talking about it for like days now. Yeah, it'd be freaking awesome. You don't get cost-controlled superstar playmakers like that every day. You really don't. You drop a young quarterback into that equation, even if it's a developmental player, their chances of being competent, quality, starting level exponentially increase, right? We traded OBJ the second we drafted Daniel Jones. What happens if you put Daniel Jones on this team with a good offensive line and Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors? We probably see a much better version or a much better ascension of his development than what we did experience with him. We killed any chance of that young man succeeding. Look, I don't think Daniel Jones was like great to begin with. I think his qualities were always flawed, but we didn't do him any favors either. So I would love to get a good quarterback and drop him into a situation where he is, in a spot where he can succeed, not where he's going to fail. That would be nice. And I think the Giants have a chance to do that. So I hope they actually execute it the right way.
Absolutely. And I just can't wait to see what happens on draft night. I think it's going to be a crazy one. We will see how it goes. But of course, this is the time now we are finally going to have to end the live stream so Alex can get ready for bath time and every other activity that he has planned for the evening. So really do appreciate you all who stuck with us for the over hour that we were live for. We're supposed to be a shorter one today. We always say that. never comes true. We always sit here for way longer than expected, but hey, that's because we enjoy talking to all of you in the Fireside Giants community so much and hanging out with our fellow Giants friends and family. So appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode or a live stream. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comment section if you're watching the live stream replay, and make sure you go ahead and check us out on Apple and Spotify and give us a 5-star review over there. And make sure you go follow us on social media channels at Fireside Giants everywhere as well. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.